Have you ever felt too much? Felt someone's pain so deeply that it became your own? You care, you give, you show up, yet somehow you end up exhausted, misunderstood, and sometimes even taken for granted. If you've ever said to yourself, I just care too much, this audiobook is for you. Because empathy, while beautiful, can become heavy when it isn't balanced. And in a world that often confuses kindness for weakness, the very heart that wants to heal others can end up wounded itself. But what if you could care deeply without collapsing under the weight of it all? What if your empathy could become your greatest strength, not your greatest source of pain? Welcome to Empathy Without Burnout. Caring deeply without being drained, taken advantage of, or manipulated. This audiobook is your journey to understanding how to protect your heart without closing it, how to be compassionate without being consumed, and how to give love without losing yourself. Through 15 powerful chapters, you'll uncover the psychology of empathy, the art of setting emotional boundaries, and the wisdom to stay strong and centered in a chaotic world. You'll learn from the examples of great leaders, the lessons of emotional resilience, and the practical tools to turn empathy into empowerment. So, find a quiet space, take a deep breath, and get ready to transform the way you love, listen, and live. Because this isn't just another self-help audiobook, it's a roadmap to your emotional freedom. Now, let's begin. Before we dive in, we've noticed that most people who listen to our audiobooks never subscribe to the channel. So do me and yourself a favor. Like this video, share it with someone who's ready to grow, and subscribe to this channel so you never miss more empowering content designed to help you grow. Chapter 1. The Gift and Curse of Empathy. Empathy, it's one of the most beautiful gifts a human being can possess. It's the ability to feel what someone else feels, to step into their world, sense their pain, and understand their emotions as if they were your own. But as with every great gift, empathy carries a silent shadow, the risk of being consumed by what you feel for others. Empathy, when misunderstood or unmanaged, can turn from strength into struggle. Let's start by understanding what empathy truly means beyond emotion. Empathy is not just about crying when others cry or smiling when they smile. It's deeper than sympathy, which simply acknowledges another's suffering, and different from compassion, which moves us to act to ease that suffering. Empathy is the bridge between hearts. It's emotional imagination, the ability to sense the inner life of another person without losing your own center. But here's the danger. When your empathy is ungrounded, you don't just connect with others, you absorb them. You take on their pain, their energy, their mood, until you're no longer sure what feelings belong to you and what belongs to them. Think about the nurse who comforts every patient, but collapses in exhaustion when she gets home. Think of the parent who always carries everyone's burdens, but forgets to care for themselves. Or the friend who always listens, always helps, but feels invisible when they're the one in need. That's empathy, unbalanced, uncontrolled, and draining. One of the clearest examples of empathy's double edge can be seen in the story of Jacinda Ardern, the former Prime Minister of New Zealand. She was widely admired for her kindness and her deeply human approach to leadership, particularly in moments of national tragedy. Her compassion was her superpower. But Ardern herself once said that empathy can be emotionally exhausting. She described the weight of feeling responsible for the collective pain of millions. Her story reminds us that empathy, even when used for the highest good, can exact a personal cost if we do not learn how to balance it. That's the curse hidden inside the gift. Now let's break down the subtle difference between empathy, sympathy, and compassion, because understanding these distinctions helps us manage our emotional energy wisely. Sympathy says, I feel sorry for you. It's emotional acknowledgement from a distance. Empathy says, I feel what you feel. It's connection at a heart level. Compassion says, I understand what you feel and I want to help. Sympathy is surface understanding. Empathy is shared experience. Compassion is empathy combined with wisdom, the wisdom to care without losing balance. The Buddhist teacher Thich Nhat Hanh explained it best in his book, No Mud, No Lotus. He said, compassion is a verb. It's empathy guided by awareness. It knows when to hold space and when to let go. It doesn't drown in another's suffering. It becomes a light that guides them out. When empathy matures into compassion, it no longer drains you. It energizes you. But most of us were never taught how to make that shift. We were raised to believe that being a good person means saying yes to everyone, carrying everyone's load, and never complaining. We were told to be kind, but not told how to protect our emotional energy while doing it. So what happens? We become emotional sponges. We start absorbing other people's stress, sadness, and disappointment. It's like walking through the rain without an umbrella. Soon, you're soaked, but you don't even notice when it started. You might have felt this at work, when a colleague's anxiety becomes your anxiety. Or at home, when a loved one's bad mood shapes your whole day. Or on social media, where scrolling through endless pain stories leaves you feeling drained even though you haven't left your chair. This is what emotional overexposure looks like. Empathy is powerful because it builds bridges. It makes us human. It's what allows world leaders to unite nations, heal divisions, and inspire hope. Mother Teresa once said, "If we have no peace, it is because we have forgotten that we belong to each other." That statement is empathy in action. But what many don't see is that Mother Teresa often struggled with loneliness and emotional exhaustion. Her private writings revealed moments of deep inner pain, a reminder that even the greatest hearts can grow weary. Empathy without balance burns out the soul. So, how can you keep your empathy alive without letting it consume you? First, learn to pause before absorbing. When someone shares their pain, take a breath. Feel with them, but remember, you are witnessing their experience, not living it. Second, create emotional boundaries. You can care deeply without saying yes to every demand. Boundaries are not rejection. They are respect for yourself and for others. Third, practice compassion instead of emotional fusion. Help when you can, but don't take ownership of what's not yours to fix. And finally, recharge your emotional batteries. Empathy is like a candle. It can light many others, but it still needs to protect its own flame. Spend time alone. Journal. Pray. Walk in nature. Reflect. Every act of self-care is a way of keeping your empathy sustainable. So, if you're someone who feels everything deeply, who cries easily, loves fiercely, and often ends up emotionally drained, know this. Your empathy is not a weakness. It's your gift, but it's a gift that needs guidance, awareness, and structure. Empathy should expand your heart, not empty it. It should make you wiser, not weaker. Remember, you can hold someone's hand without carrying their entire weight. That's the art of caring deeply without being drained. Key takeaways for you. Empathy is powerful, but without boundaries, it becomes emotional overload. Sympathy feels for others. Empathy feels with them. Compassion helps wisely. Even world leaders and humanitarians struggle with empathy fatigue. It's normal. You can't pour from an empty cup. Protecting your energy keeps your empathy alive. The goal is not to feel less, but to feel wisely, to love deeply without losing yourself. As we move into the next chapter, we'll explore the energy cost of caring too much and how to recognize when your empathy has turned into emotional exhaustion. If this message spoke to your heart, take a moment to support this channel. Like, share, and subscribe so we can continue learning and growing together. You never know. Your one share might help someone who's silently burning out from caring too much. Chapter 2. The energy cost of caring too much. Have you ever felt completely exhausted after listening to someone else's problems? Maybe you tried to help a friend through heartbreak, supported a colleague through crisis, or carried your family's emotional burdens, only to find yourself mentally empty. That, right there, is the hidden energy cost of caring too much. Empathy is a beautiful gift. It connects us to humanity. It allows us to feel another person's joy, sorrow, and struggle. But empathy, when not balanced, can quietly drain your energy until you have nothing left for yourself. Today, let's talk about emotional fatigue and compassion burnout, what they really mean, how to recognize them, and how to protect your inner light before it flickers out. Emotional fatigue and compassion burnout explained. Emotional fatigue is not just being tired. It's when your heart feels heavy even after resting. It's when you wake up already exhausted because your mind has been carrying emotional weight for too long. Compassion burnout is what happens when caring becomes chronic. It's what doctors, teachers, social workers, parents, and even leaders face when they continuously pour out empathy without refilling their own emotional cup. Consider Jacinda Ardern, the former Prime Minister of New Zealand. During her leadership, she faced national tragedies, global crises, and relentless public expectations. She led with compassion, but in early 2023, she stepped down, saying simply, "I no longer have enough in the tank." That moment resonated with millions around the world. Her honesty showed that even the most empathetic leaders need to recognize when their emotional energy is depleted. Caring deeply doesn't make you weak. Ignoring your exhaustion does. Signs you're emotionally drained by helping others. Sometimes we don't even realize we're running on empty. Here are some subtle signs of emotional drain: irritability or sudden detachment. You start feeling numb to others' problems or frustrated when people need you. Loss of motivation. Tasks you once enjoyed feel heavy and meaningless. Physical tiredness. Even after a full night's sleep, your body feels weighed down. Avoidance. You begin to avoid calls, messages, or responsibilities, not out of laziness, but out of silent exhaustion. Guilt. You feel guilty for not doing enough, even though you've been doing far too much. You see, empathy is like holding a mirror to someone's pain. But when that mirror never rests, it begins to crack. I remember reading a passage in The Art of Happiness by the Dalai Lama and Howard Cutler. The Dalai Lama said, "Compassion is not a relationship between the healer and the wounded. It's a relationship between equals." What he meant is this: when compassion becomes one-sided, when you always give and never receive, it transforms from healing energy into self-neglect. How empathy can unconsciously turn into self-neglect. Many of us were taught to be good people by always helping others. But too often, we confuse kindness with self-sacrifice. You stay up late comforting others, but who comforts you? You say yes to every request because you don't want to disappoint anyone, yet every yes chips away at your peace. Empathy without limits turns into invisible self-neglect. You might tell yourself, "I'm fine," when you're not. You might keep showing up for everyone, hoping someone will notice your quiet struggle, but they rarely do because you look like the strong one. Think of Angela Merkel, former Chancellor of Germany. For years, she carried the weight of Europe's economic and humanitarian challenges with remarkable steadiness. In an interview after stepping down, she admitted how constant decision-making and the emotional toll of leadership required her to relearn rest. That phrase, "relearn rest," is powerful. It reminds us that even empathy must pause to breathe. Self-neglect doesn't always scream. It whispers through skipped meals, ignored emotions, and that constant thought, "they need me." But real empathy includes yourself in the circle of care. Why awareness is the first step toward balance. So how do you begin to care deeply without losing yourself? The first step is awareness. You cannot change what you don't see. Pause and notice. Who drains your energy the most? What situations leave you feeling heavy? When do you feel your empathy turning into exhaustion? Awareness turns invisible patterns into visible choices. A practical way to build awareness is through the daily check-in method. Each evening, ask yourself 3 questions. What emotion did I absorb today that wasn't mine? What part of my day gave me peace? What can I release before I sleep? This simple reflection helps you separate your feelings from others' energy. Over time, you'll start to notice when you're carrying emotional weight that doesn't belong to you. Another strategy is visualization. Before entering a stressful situation, imagine an invisible light around you, your energy field. It's not a wall. It's a gentle filter that allows love in but keeps toxicity out. It's a mental reminder that empathy and self-protection can coexist. Think about the flight safety instruction you hear before takeoff. Put on your own oxygen mask first before helping others. That's not selfish, it's survival. Empathy works the same way. You cannot help others breathe emotionally if you're gasping for air. Mother Teresa, one of the most compassionate figures in modern history, once said, "To keep a lamp burning, we have to keep putting oil in it." Your empathy is that lamp. If you keep pouring out light without adding oil, eventually the flame dies. Key takeaways for you. Empathy has an energy cost. Every act of caring draws from your emotional reserves. Emotional fatigue is real. Pay attention to signs like numbness, irritability, or guilt. Boundaries prevent burnout. Protect your energy before it's depleted. Self-care is not selfish. It's sustainable compassion. You can't pour from an empty heart. Awareness is healing. The moment you notice your emotional drain, you've already begun to restore balance. Take a moment right now. Close your eyes and breathe deeply. Ask yourself, where have I been caring too much? And where do I need to care for myself more? You don't have to stop being kind. You just need to include yourself in that kindness. Empathy without self-care becomes martyrdom. Empathy with awareness becomes mastery. So, as you move forward, remember this. Caring deeply doesn't mean carrying endlessly. If this message spoke to you, share it with someone who gives their heart too freely. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel so you never miss the next empowering chapter of empathy without burnout. Together, let's learn to care with strength, peace, and balance. Chapter 3. Understanding Emotional Boundaries. Boundaries, a word that sounds simple, but for many of us who feel deeply, it's one of the hardest things to practice. When you're an empathetic person, saying no can feel like you're letting someone down. Setting limits might feel like rejection, and taking space for yourself might feel selfish. But here's the truth. Boundaries are not walls. They are filters. Walls shut people out. Filters let love in, but keep toxicity out. Boundaries don't make you cold. They keep you clear. When you don't set them, you risk drowning in everyone else's emotions. But when you do, you create space to care better, not less. Think of empathy as a garden. Your kindness, compassion, and emotional presence are the beautiful flowers that grow in it. But every garden needs a fence, not to stop beauty from coming in, but to stop weeds from taking over. Without that fence, everything grows wild. And soon, what was once nurturing becomes suffocating. That's exactly what happens to empathetic people who live without boundaries. They try to love everyone, fix everyone, be there for everyone, until there's nothing left of themselves. Let's pause and reflect for a moment. Have you ever felt emotionally exhausted after helping someone? Or found yourself overthinking whether you've done enough? Maybe you've said yes when your body screamed no, just to avoid guilt or conflict. That, right there, is emotional overreach. Boundaries are the invisible lines that separate your emotions from other people's emotions. Without them, you start carrying what isn't yours to carry. In leadership, in parenting, in relationships, and even in friendships, this principle applies everywhere. Let's look at an example from a world leader. Angela Merkel, the former Chancellor of Germany. She led during some of the most challenging periods of European history: the refugee crisis, economic instability, and countless political conflicts. Merkel was known for her calm empathy, but also for her firm boundaries. She listened deeply, but never let others' emotional chaos dictate her actions. In interviews, she once said, "You must not lose your compass, even when others lose theirs." That's emotional boundaries in action. She showed compassion toward those in need, but never allowed emotional pressure to sway her leadership decisions. She demonstrated that empathy with boundaries isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Imagine someone at work who constantly leans on you for emotional support. They vent for hours, and you listen because you care. But afterwards, you feel drained, distracted, and heavy. That's emotional overreach in the workplace. You're trying to be kind, but you've unconsciously absorbed their energy. Or in a family setting, maybe you're always the one solving everyone's problems, even at the expense of your peace. You end up feeling resentful, not because you don't love them, but because you've been carrying what was never meant for you to carry. Healthy empathy says, I can care for you, but I won't become you. So how do we build these boundaries without guilt? Let's break it down into 4 practical steps. Step 1. Identify your emotional limits. Notice when you start to feel tired, tense, or resentful. These are your body's alarms telling you that your boundary is being crossed. Write them down. Awareness is power. Step 2. Communicate clearly and calmly. Boundaries fail not because they're wrong, but because they're unclear. You can say things like, I really want to support you, but need to take some time to recharge first. Or, I care about this conversation, but I can't continue it right now. Firmness wrapped in kindness is the key. Step 3. Let go of guilt. Many empathetic people feel bad for saying no. But remember, every time you say yes to something that drains you, you're saying no to your peace. Boundaries are not rejection, they're redirection. Step 4. Protect your space. Create quiet time for yourself. Meditate, journal, walk, pray, whatever helps you return to your emotional center. Think of this as recharging your empathy battery. Jacinda Ardern, former Prime Minister of New Zealand. During crises, from natural disasters to national tragedies, Ardern was praised globally for her empathy. Yet, she also knew when to step back and say, I cannot pour from an empty cup. In 2023, she announced her resignation, saying she no longer had enough in the tank to continue leading effectively. That decision shocked the world, but it was a powerful lesson in boundaries. It reminded us that even leaders must protect their mental and emotional health. True empathy includes the courage to rest. Here's a quote from the book, Set Boundaries, Find Peace by Nedra Glover Tawwab. You can't set boundaries and take care of other people's feelings at the same time. That line hits deep, because most of us try to do both. We try to protect our peace and make sure no one feels bad about it. But that's impossible. You must choose peace over people-pleasing. Healthy people will understand. Unhealthy ones will resist. That's how you know where to place your energy. Remember, emotional boundaries don't disconnect you from others. They connect you to yourself. And the stronger that connection is, the more powerful your empathy becomes. Imagine empathy as light. Without boundaries, that light scatters everywhere. It loses focus. But with boundaries, that light becomes a laser, sharp, focused, and healing. When you learn to create emotional separation without guilt, you no longer drown in the emotions of others. You float above them, observing, understanding, but staying steady in your own truth. You begin to see that protecting your energy isn't selfish. It's sacred. Key takeaways for you. Boundaries are filters, not walls. They let love in and keep toxicity out. Your emotions are your responsibility. Others' emotions are theirs. Empathy without limits leads to emotional burnout. You can be kind without being available 24/7. Every no to others is a yes to your well-being. So as you continue your journey of empathy, remember, you're not meant to save everyone. You're meant to stay grounded, loving, and at peace. Because only a centered soul can truly help others rise. Protect your energy, nourish your peace, and let your empathy shine without burnout. If this chapter spoke to your heart, take a moment to reflect on where you might need clearer boundaries in your life. And before you go, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Your support helps us create more empowering audiobooks like this one, helping people around the world care deeply without being drained. Chapter 4, The Manipulator's Playbook. There's a saying that goes, not everyone who smiles at you has good intentions. And if you're an empathetic person, that truth can feel like a punch in the chest. Because empathy, your ability to see and feel others' emotions, can be a gift. But in the wrong hands, it becomes a target. Manipulators love empathetic people. You see, empathy is like a bright light in a dark room. It attracts both those who seek warmth and those who crave control. The manipulator doesn't always appear cruel or arrogant at first. Often, they appear hurt, helpless, or charming. They seem like they just need a bit of understanding. And you, being kind-hearted, open your heart and say, I can help. That's where it begins. How emotional manipulators exploit empathy. Manipulators don't just take advantage of your kindness. They study it. They observe your responses, your tone, the way your eyes soften when someone's in pain. Then they adjust their behavior to fit your compassion. They know what words to use to trigger your guilt. They know how to twist a story so that you'll sympathize with them. They know how to turn your empathy into their weapon. Think of a leader like Catherine the Great of Russia. History remembers her as intelligent and politically shrewd, but she also navigated a court full of manipulators, sycophants, and power-hungry nobles. She learned early that some people praised her not out of loyalty, but out of self-interest. Those who were naive in her court, those who believed flattery always meant friendship, were often the first to fall. Manipulators understand human psychology at a survival level. They sense the compassionate ones and think, here's someone I can use. Common tactics in the manipulator's playbook. Let's look at some of their most common tactics. 1. Guilt tripping. A manipulator will make you feel guilty for having boundaries. You say no, and they say, after all I've done for you? You take time for yourself, and they sigh, I guess you don't care about me anymore. They twist your empathy into emotional debt. But remember this, kindness does not mean you owe anyone your peace. 2. Gaslighting. Gaslighting is when someone makes you question your own perception. They'll say, I never said that, or you're overreacting, until you begin to doubt your memory and feelings. It's one of the most dangerous manipulative tools because it disconnects you from your inner truth. Psychologist Dr. Robin Stern, in her book The Gaslight Effect, wrote that gaslighting works because it slowly erodes your ability to trust yourself. Once that trust is broken, you become dependent on the manipulator for reality itself. 3. Playing the victim. This is the manipulator's favorite costume. They'll twist every conflict so they appear helpless and blameless. They cry, they beg, they make you feel like the villain for protecting yourself. You might find yourself apologizing even when you were the one hurt. That's how you know the manipulation is working. You start feeling guilty for doing what's right. Why nice people often attract manipulators. If you're wondering why this happens to you, you're not alone. Empathetic people are magnets for manipulation, not because they're weak, but because they feel deeply. Nice people want harmony. They avoid conflict. They believe in forgiveness. Manipulators sense that. They know you'll hesitate to call them out. They know you'll rationalize their behavior with thoughts like, maybe they're just having a hard time. Think of Queen Elizabeth I, a leader known for her grace and intelligence. She surrounded herself with advisors and suitors who constantly tried to manipulate her for power. But unlike many nice leaders before her, Elizabeth learned to read motives rather than words. She remained empathetic but not naive. She once said, I have the heart and stomach of a king. That balance of empathy and strength was her greatest armor. Being kind doesn't mean being blind. You can care deeply and still see clearly. You can forgive but not forget patterns that repeat. Red flags to spot emotional exploitation early. So, how do you protect your heart before it's drained? Here are some red flags. 1. You always feel guilty around them. No matter what you do, you end up feeling responsible for their moods. 2. The relationship feels one-sided. They take emotional support, but rarely return it when you need help. 3. They twist your words. Simple conversations turn into confusion, defensiveness, or guilt. 4. You feel drained after interacting with them. Empathy should leave you warm, not weary. If someone consistently exhausts you, that's not connection, it's extraction. 5. They punish your boundaries. When you say no, they sulk, lash out, or give you the silent treatment. The earlier you notice these patterns, the quicker you can protect your peace. Because manipulation thrives in confusion. Clarity is your weapon. How to break free from the manipulator's game. First, trust your intuition. If something feels off, it usually is. Empaths often override their instincts because they fear being too harsh. But your gut is your emotional radar. It senses danger before your mind rationalizes it away. Second, set emotional distance. You don't have to explain or defend your boundaries to everyone. Silence and distance are often the loudest answers to manipulation. Third, stay anchored in truth. Write down facts of what happened, especially when you feel confused. Gaslighting only works when your memory is blurred, so document reality for yourself. Finally, remember this. Not everyone deserves full access to your empathy. Compassion is powerful, but it must be earned through respect. Think of someone who often leaves you drained, guilty, or questioning your sanity. Now, imagine stepping back, not with anger, but with calm strength. You're not rejecting them. You're protecting your peace. Empathy without wisdom becomes emotional slavery. But empathy with awareness becomes emotional mastery. Key takeaways for you. Manipulators exploit empathy by using guilt, gaslighting, and victimhood. Nice people attract them because of compassion and conflict avoidance. Learn to trust your intuition. It's your built-in protection. Emotional boundaries are acts of self-respect, not rejection. The most loving thing you can do for others is not to let them turn your kindness into control. Remember, your empathy is not a weakness, it's a light. But even light needs direction, or it burns everything around it. Protect it, guide it, honor it. If this chapter helped you see through manipulation more clearly, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs to hear it too. And before you go, please like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful lessons on emotional strength and self-mastery. Your empathy deserves to be protected. You deserve to care deeply, without being drained, taken advantage of, or manipulated. Chapter 5, The Empath's Inner Wounds. Have you ever found yourself giving so much to others that you forget who you are? Have you ever said yes when every part of you wanted to say no? If that sounds familiar, then this chapter is for you. Let's take an honest look at the inner wounds that shape the empath's journey. Because beneath the kindness, beneath the compassion, and beneath the desire to help, there often lies an unspoken story, one that began in childhood. The roots of people-pleasing. No one is born a people-pleaser. We become one. In childhood, many of us learned, often unconsciously, that love, approval, and safety were conditional. Maybe your parents only smiled when you performed well. Maybe you got attention only when you were good. Maybe you had to take care of everyone else's feelings just to keep the peace. These early experiences shape a deep emotional code. If I make others happy, I'll be safe. If I take care of their needs, I'll be loved. And so, we grow up believing that our worth is tied to our usefulness, that our value depends on how much we can give. This is where the empath's wound begins, the quiet belief that my feelings don't matter as much as theirs. The hidden belief, my worth comes from helping others. Let's talk about this hidden belief because it's one that silently governs so many empathic lives. It whispers, if I'm not helping, I'm not valuable. It pushes you to overextend, to fix, to rescue, even when you're exhausted. One of the most relatable examples of this comes from the story of Princess Diana. She was admired across the world for her deep compassion, visiting hospitals, hugging children, caring for the sick and forgotten. But behind the public grace, she once admitted feeling never enough. Her empathy was boundless, but so was her pain. She struggled to find balance between giving love to the world and receiving love for herself. Her life teaches us something profound. Empathy without self-worth becomes self-erasure. When your sense of identity depends on helping others, you lose the ability to rest, to say no, to simply be. The book Codependent No More by Melody Beattie says it perfectly. We rescue, fix, and help because we're afraid of losing love. But love that depends on our exhaustion isn't love, it's control. That's the trap of this hidden belief. You give endlessly because it feels safer than setting boundaries. You fix others because deep down, you fear what might happen if you don't. Healing the need to be needed, how do we stop trying to earn love through service? First, we must realize that you can't heal others as a way to avoid healing yourself. The need to be needed is often a disguise, a way to distract from your own pain. But here's the truth. The people you save today may not stay tomorrow. Yet, your own heart is with you forever. The journey of healing begins when you turn your empathy inward. when you start to care for yourself with the same tenderness you offer others. Take a moment to think about someone who constantly drains you. Maybe it's a friend who always has a crisis. Maybe it's a family member who never respects your time. What if you decided, not out of anger, but self-respect, to stop rescuing them? That decision doesn't make you selfish. It makes you free. Because genuine empathy isn't about saving others. It's about understanding them while also honoring yourself. Think of Jacinda Ardern, the former Prime Minister of New Zealand. She led her nation through immense tragedy with deep empathy. Yet she also knew when it was time to step back. When she announced her resignation, she said, "I no longer have enough in the tank to do the job justice." That single statement carried profound self-awareness. She wasn't quitting. She was choosing balance. She understood that even empathy must have boundaries, and that's what keeps it pure. Inner child work and reparenting as emotional self-defense. To truly heal the empath's wound, we must go deeper, back to the inner child who learned to overgive just to survive. Picture your younger self, maybe 5, maybe 10 years old, trying to keep everyone happy. That child carried fears and responsibilities far too heavy for small shoulders. Reparenting means becoming the adult your younger self needed. It means whispering to that child, "You don't have to earn love anymore. You're already enough." Inner child work is not about blaming your past. It's about releasing it. When you comfort that inner voice, you stop reacting from old wounds. You stop saying yes to protect others, and you start saying yes to protect your peace. A simple daily practice is this. Whenever you feel compelled to overgive, pause and ask, what does my inner child need right now? Maybe it's rest. Maybe it's reassurance. Maybe it's permission to say no. By doing this, you rewire your emotional responses. You teach your nervous system that safety doesn't come from pleasing others. It comes from being true to yourself. Key takeaways for you. People-pleasing is learned behavior, not your identity. You can unlearn it by setting boundaries that protect your peace. Your worth is not tied to your usefulness. You are valuable even when you're not helping anyone. Healing the need to be needed begins with self-empathy. Understanding that love should not cost you your energy or your joy. Inner child work and reparenting allow you to nurture yourself, to stop repeating old emotional scripts, and to choose healthier patterns of connection. True empathy includes self-care. The more you respect your limits, the deeper and more authentic your compassion becomes. Empathy is one of the greatest gifts humanity has. But even a gift can become heavy when carried without balance. You don't have to prove your goodness by running yourself dry. You don't have to fix others to feel worthy. You are not here to be everyone's emotional lifeboat. You are here to live, to grow, and to shine from your own fullness. Remember this truth. When you heal your inner wounds, your empathy becomes lighter, wiser, and more sustainable. You begin to help not because you need to, but because you choose to. That's the essence of empathy without burnout. Caring deeply without losing yourself in the process. If this chapter spoke to your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your engagement helps this message reach more people who, just like you, are learning to care deeply, without being drained, taken advantage of, or manipulated. Take a deep breath. You're healing beautifully. Now, let's move forward to the next chapter, where we'll explore how to give from fullness, not emptiness. Chapter 6, From Overgiving to Healthy Generosity. In this chapter, we're diving into something that many kind-hearted people struggle with, the difference between overgiving and healthy generosity. Because the truth is this, giving isn't always good when it comes from exhaustion. True generosity uplifts both the giver and the receiver. Overgiving, on the other hand, drains the giver and often enables the receiver to stay dependent. Let's explore how to move from that draining cycle into one of empowered, balanced, and joyful generosity. Giving from fullness versus giving from emptiness. Imagine your energy, your time, your emotional strength as water in a cup. If you pour out everything you have without ever refilling, what happens? Soon, the cup runs dry. That's what happens when you give from emptiness, from guilt, fear, or the desire to prove your worth. But when you give from fullness, from peace, gratitude, and abundance, your generosity becomes sustainable. Angela Merkel, the former Chancellor of Germany, is often seen as a symbol of calm leadership and emotional intelligence. During her years in leadership, she carried immense responsibility, managing crises, refugees, and complex international relations. Yet, she was known for her boundaries and composure. Merkel once said, "I am not someone who lets emotion rule my decisions." Her ability to care deeply for her people while maintaining clear emotional limits is a lesson in healthy generosity. She gave what she could, decisively, intentionally, without burning out. That's the key difference. When you give from fullness, you're offering strength. When you give from emptiness, you're offering your survival energy. Why we fall into overgiving. Overgiving often begins with good intentions. We want to help. We want to be seen as kind, supportive, reliable. But underneath those good intentions can hide silent fears. The fear of being rejected if we say no. The fear of disappointing others. The belief that our worth is tied to how much we do for others. In The Gifts of Imperfection by Brené Brown, she wrote, "When we fail to set boundaries and hold people accountable, we feel used and mistreated. That's the cycle of overgiving. You help too much, feel drained, and end up feeling guilty or resentful afterward. Learning to say no without guilt. Saying no is one of the hardest lessons for an empathic or caring person. But here's the truth. Every yes you give without joy steals energy from something that truly matters. Think about that. If you say yes to every request, you're actually saying no to your rest, your health, and your peace. One powerful example comes from former New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern. During her tenure, she was admired worldwide for her empathy-driven leadership, especially during crises. But in early 2023, she stepped down, saying, "I no longer have enough in the tank to do it justice." That wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. She recognized her limits and made a healthy, compassionate choice. Learning to say no without guilt means understanding that your energy is sacred. You can't pour from an empty cup, and you're not obligated to keep giving just because you've always done so. Practical tips for setting limits kindly. Sometimes the hardest part isn't wanting to set boundaries. It's knowing how to do it kindly. Here are a few practical scripts you can use in real life. The gentle no. "I really appreciate you thinking of me, but I won't be able to take this on right now." The redirect. "I can't do that for you, but have you tried asking ____?" The honest pause. "Let me think about it and get back to you." This gives you space to make intentional choices instead of automatic yes. The energy check. "I've had a full week and need time to recharge. Can we do this another time?" These phrases communicate respect for others and for yourself. You don't need to justify your no with long explanations. A calm, confident tone says enough. Remember, boundaries are bridges, not walls. They protect connection instead of destroying it. How true generosity includes yourself. Here's a mindset shift that changes everything. You are part of the circle of your own generosity. When you include yourself in your care, you multiply your capacity to help others. This is what I call circular empathy, giving to yourself, then letting that energy flow outward. Take care of your physical needs. Rest, good food, sleep. Nourish your emotional needs. Time alone, hobbies, laughter, quiet moments. Nurture your spiritual needs. Prayer, meditation, reflection, gratitude. Because when you fill your own cup, your giving becomes effortless and joyful. Think of it like the oxygen mask rule on an airplane. You're told to secure your mask first before helping others. That's not selfish. It's practical compassion. When you care for yourself, you can sustain your kindness. When you neglect yourself, your empathy becomes self-sacrifice. Consider someone like Kofi Annan, the former Secretary General of the United Nations. He was known for his calm demeanor and deep empathy, yet he consistently emphasized structure, delegation, and balance. He once said, "To live is to choose. But to choose well, you must know who you are and what you stand for." That's the heart of healthy generosity. knowing what you stand for, where your limits are, and how to give meaningfully without losing yourself. Key takeaways for you. You cannot give sustainably from an empty heart. Replenish your energy so that your generosity remains joyful. Overgiving comes from fear, not love. Examine your motives and free yourself from guilt-driven giving. Saying no is an act of self-respect. You're not rejecting others. You're protecting your peace. Healthy generosity includes self-care. You are worthy of the same kindness you show others. Balance is love in motion. It's not selfish to protect your energy. It's wise. Imagine a world where empathy is strong but not exhausting, where people give because they want to, not because they have to. That's what happens when you practice healthy generosity. You still care. You still help. But now, you do it from a place of inner peace, not depletion. When you live this way, your relationships grow richer, your mind stays calmer, and your heart stays open without being consumed. So the next time someone asks for more than you can give, remember, your no today might be the yes to your peace tomorrow. If this message spoke to your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Like, share, and subscribe, because somewhere out there, another caring soul needs to hear that it's okay to protect their peace and still be kind. Thank you for listening, and remember, true generosity always includes you. Chapter 7. The Psychology of Emotional Vampires. Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling completely drained, as if someone had quietly siphoned all your energy? You might not be imagining it. You may have just interacted with what psychologists call an emotional vampire. Emotional vampires aren't creatures from Storybook. They don't drink blood. They drain energy. They do this through manipulation, guilt, constant complaining, or controlling behavior. They feed off emotional attention, and without strong boundaries, empaths become their favorite meal. In this chapter, we'll explore how emotional vampires operate, why empaths are especially vulnerable to them, and, most importantly, how you can protect your peace without losing your compassion. Let's start by understanding the three main types of energy drainers you'll encounter: the narcissist, the victim, and the controller. The narcissist is driven by an inflated sense of self-importance. They crave admiration and control conversations so that everything revolves around them. You may have noticed how such people can make you feel small, invisible, or even guilty for having needs. They often disguise manipulation as charm. Take the example of Queen Cleopatra of ancient Egypt. History paints her as intelligent and charismatic, but also as someone who could bend others to her will through emotional seduction and psychological manipulation. While she used this skill for survival and power in a world dominated by men, it shows how emotional influence, when used selfishly, can drain those around you. The second type is the victim, the person who constantly plays the poor me role. They complain endlessly about how unfair life is, but never take responsibility or seek real solutions. Their suffering becomes their identity. Every time you try to help, they reject it, insisting that nothing can change. Over time, you find yourself emotionally exhausted because your empathy turns into pity and your energy into fuel for their drama. And then there's the controller. The controller drains you not with tears, but with authority and domination. They micromanage your emotions, your time, even your opinions. Everything must go their way. They use guilt and fear to keep you in their orbit. You might recognize this dynamic in history with leaders who ruled by fear. For instance, Joseph Stalin, whose need for control led to an atmosphere of constant fear and exhaustion in his people. While not every controller is that extreme, the underlying psychology is similar: a deep fear of losing power disguised as dominance. Now, why do empaths attract these kinds of people? Because empaths radiate emotional warmth. They listen deeply, understand others easily, and are often willing to see the good even in toxic behavior. To an emotional vampire, this is irresistible. This is called the empath-narcissist dynamic, a psychological dance between giver and taker. The empath gives endlessly, hoping to heal or be understood. The narcissist takes endlessly, believing they deserve that attention. Dr. Judith Orloff, in her book The Empath's Survival Guide, describes this perfectly. Empaths give too much, narcissists take too much, and the result is emotional bankruptcy. In simple terms, empathy without boundaries becomes self-destruction. You cannot save someone who is committed to staying the same. Imagine your emotional energy as a battery. Every interaction either charges or drains it. Emotional vampires drain it because they expect you to fix their feelings or feed their ego. But you are not an emotional charger for others. You are a whole human being with your own needs, limits, and purpose. Think of a workplace scenario. You have a colleague who constantly complains about their workload. You help them finish their tasks, comfort them, and even stay late just to ease their burden. Yet, instead of appreciation, you receive more complaints. They might even start expecting your help as a right, not a favor. Over time, you feel drained, unmotivated, and resentful. Why? Because you're giving compassion without boundaries. You've allowed empathy to cross into self-sacrifice. The same thing happens in friendships and romantic relationships. The more you give without boundaries, the more some people take. It's not that they're evil. It's that your unguarded kindness becomes a silent invitation to overstep. So, how do you protect yourself without hardening your heart? Here are powerful strategies to disengage and protect your peace. 1. Recognize emotional patterns early. Don't wait until you're drained to notice something is off. Pay attention to how you feel after interacting with someone. If you constantly feel tense, guilty, or exhausted, that's your signal. 2. Use emotional detachment as a shield. You can be kind without being consumed. Emotional detachment doesn't mean coldness. It means maintaining an inner space between your emotions and someone else's chaos. 3. Stop explaining yourself. Manipulators often keep you trapped in endless justifications. You don't owe anyone an emotional report for your boundaries. A simple, "I can't do that right now," or "that doesn't work for me" is enough. 4. Practice the gray rock method. This is a psychological strategy used to deal with manipulators. You become emotionally neutral and uninteresting. When they can't feed on your reaction, they move on. 5. Refill your emotional tank daily. Meditation, journaling, walking in nature, or spending time with uplifting people helps restore your emotional balance. Consider the example of Angela Merkel, Germany's former chancellor. Throughout her political career, Merkel was often surrounded by competing personalities, egos, and pressures. Yet, she was known for her calm detachment, never overreacting, never emotionally manipulated. She listened deeply but stayed centered. That is what balanced empathy looks like, compassion guided by clarity. Marcus Aurelius in Meditation said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Emotional vampires thrive when you forget that power. The moment you reclaim your emotional independence, their control fades. If you've ever felt like your kindness was being exploited, you're not weak. You are simply unaware of how empathy works without protection. Your heart is not the problem. Your lack of boundaries was. Boundaries are not rejection. They're self-respect. They're your way of saying, "I can care for you, but I must also care for me." You can walk away from emotional vampires with grace, not guilt. You can remain loving without being a target. You can keep your empathy and your peace. Key takeaways for you. Emotional vampires drain energy through manipulation, control, or endless victimhood. Empaths attract them because of their warmth and willingness to understand. Empathy without boundaries leads to emotional exhaustion. Protect your energy through awareness, detachment, and self-respect. You can be kind, compassionate, and peaceful without being drained. Remember, you cannot pour from an empty cup. Your peace is sacred, and it's your responsibility to protect it. Take a moment to reflect on the relationships in your life. Ask yourself, who feeds my energy and who drains it? Then choose peace every single time. And before you go, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Your support helps more people learn how to care deeply without being drained. Because true empathy doesn't mean losing yourself. It means learning to love wisely. Chapter 8. learning emotional detachment without losing compassion. Have you ever cared so deeply that another person's pain became your own? Maybe you listened to a friend's struggles, and by the time you got home, you felt heavy, as if you carried their entire world on your shoulders. That's empathy at its finest, and at its most dangerous. In this chapter, we'll explore a skill every deeply caring person must learn: emotional detachment. It sounds cold, doesn't it? Almost heartless. But emotional detachment isn't about caring less. It's about caring wisely. It's the ability to stay kind, compassionate, and helpful without being consumed by another person's emotions. What emotional detachment really means and what it's not. Emotional detachment is often misunderstood. Some people think it means building a wall, cutting off your feelings, or becoming indifferent. But that's not detachment. That's emotional suppression. And suppression only leads to resentment, numbness, and disconnection. True emotional detachment is the freedom to feel deeply without drowning. It means you can listen to someone's pain, offer understanding, even cry with them, but still walk away with your peace intact. The great spiritual teacher Dalai Lama once said, "Love and compassion are necessities, not luxuries. Without them, humanity cannot survive." But he also practices detachment daily, not by closing his heart, but by recognizing that every soul must walk their own journey. His compassion doesn't come from emotional chaos. It comes from inner calm. Detachment is knowing, I can care deeply for you, but I'm not responsible for fixing you. How to stay kind, but not consumed. Think of emotional detachment like holding a cup of hot tea. If you grip it too tightly, you burn your hands. But if you hold it gently, you can feel its warmth without pain. Empathy works the same way. Let's look at a real-world example. Jacinda Ardern, former Prime Minister of New Zealand, was widely admired for her empathy and composure. When tragedy struck her nation, she showed deep compassion, visiting victims' families, embracing those in pain. Yet she remained centered and steady enough to lead effectively. That's the essence of emotional detachment. Heart-led leadership balanced with inner regulation. So how do you achieve this balance in your own life? Pause before reacting. When someone shares their pain, resist the urge to fix it instantly. Take a breath. Ask yourself, is this my emotion or theirs? Separate empathy from responsibility. You could be a good listener without becoming a savior. Compassion means walking beside someone, not carrying them on your back. Protect your energy. If certain environments always leave you drained, endless complaints, emotional chaos, limit your exposure. Protecting your peace isn't selfish. It's sacred self-respect. The art of witnessing pain without absorbing it. Emotional detachment invites us to become a witness instead of a sponge. Imagine watching waves crash on the shore. You see the storm, you feel the wind, but you stay safely on the sand. That's what it means to witness pain, to be present, but not swallowed by the storm. During Angela Merkel, former Chancellor of Germany, years in leadership, she faced numerous crises: economic collapses, refugee challenges, political turmoil. Observers often noted her calm, analytical demeanor, even in chaos. Merkel's secret wasn't a lack of empathy. It was measured empathy. She listened deeply, processed thoughtfully, and responded rationally. She didn't let emotion hijack her leadership. She channeled it into wise decision-making. This kind of detachment doesn't erase feeling, it refines it. When you witness instead of absorb, you stay grounded enough to make clear, loving, and useful choices. Practices for emotional grounding and neutrality. Detachment is not learned overnight. It's a daily practice, a kind of emotional hygiene. Here are a few simple techniques you can start using today. Grounding through the body. When emotions feel overwhelming, bring yourself back to your senses. Feel your feet on the floor. Take slow breaths. Say silently, I am safe. I am here. This reconnects you to the present moment where calm lives. Visualization technique. Picture yourself surrounded by a soft, golden light, a peaceful boundary. Others' emotions may pass through, but this light filters what doesn't belong to you. This is a powerful mental cue to maintain energetic separation. Reflective journaling. After emotional interactions, write down what you felt and what truly belonged to you. This trains your mind to recognize emotional ownership. Daily detachment mantra. Try repeating, I can care without carrying. This gentle affirmation rewires the brain to link empathy with freedom, not fatigue. Silence and solitude. Schedule moments of stillness. No screens, no conversations. Detachment grows in quiet spaces. They refill the heart. A wonderful quote from the book, The Untethered Soul, by Michael A. Singer says, "The key to inner freedom is to be okay with life instead of trying to make it go your way." This perfectly captures emotional detachment, accepting without absorbing, loving without losing yourself. When you practice detachment, you begin to notice something beautiful. You can listen without judgment. You can help without resentment. You can love without exhaustion. People start trusting your calm energy. They come to you not because you fix them, but because your peace reminds them they can fix themselves. You'll start handling life's chaos with quiet strength, the kind that doesn't shout but steadies every room you walk into. And most importantly, you'll stop measuring your worth by how much you suffer for others. You'll realize that protecting your peace is part of protecting your purpose. Key takeaways for you. Emotional detachment is not coldness. It's compassionate clarity. You can care deeply and still stay grounded in your own emotional center. Detachment allows you to help others effectively without losing your peace. Boundaries, mindfulness, and grounding are essential tools for every empath. True compassion includes yourself, always. Remember, empathy without detachment is like sunlight without shade. Too much of it can scorch the soul. But balanced empathy, grounded in awareness and love, can heal both you and the world around you. If this chapter helped you see compassion in a new light, take a moment to share that light with others. Like this video, so more people can find it. Share it with someone who gives too much and forgets themselves. And subscribe for more life-changing lessons in the next chapters of Empathy Without Burnout. Because the world doesn't need us to care less. It needs us to care wiser. Chapter 9, Self-Compassion, the missing half of empathy. Empathy has always been described as the ability to feel what others feel, to sense their emotions, to hold their pain, and to offer warmth when the world turns cold. But there's a quiet truth many empathetic people forget. Empathy without self-compassion becomes self-erasure. You could be the kindest person in the room and still speak cruelly to yourself. You can comfort others with soft words, yet punish yourself for the smallest mistakes. You can carry the world's pain while neglecting your own. That is the silent tragedy of many empaths. They forget that their heart, too, deserves kindness. Self-compassion is empathy turned inward. It is saying to yourself, I am human. I am imperfect. I am worthy of the same care I give. It's not self-pity or self-indulgence. It's emotional fairness. Let's begin with a simple truth. You cannot pour from an empty cup. When you constantly prioritize others at your own expense, you start to lose the emotional energy that once made your empathy beautiful. You begin to resent, to fatigue, and to lose joy in giving. That's the body's way of whispering, please take care of me too. The psychologist Kristen Neff, in her groundbreaking book Self-Compassion, The Proven Power of Being Kind to Yourself, wrote, with self-compassion, we give ourselves the same kindness and care we'd give to a good friend. Think about that for a moment. If your best friend failed, made a mistake, or went through heartbreak, would you call them useless? Would you shame them? Or would you say, it's okay, you did your best. You'll rise again. Now think about how you talk to yourself when you fall short. Most of us speak with harshness we'd never use on another soul. Jacinda Ardern, the former Prime Minister of New Zealand. She was known worldwide for her empathy and compassion during times of crisis. Yet what made her leadership truly powerful was her emotional honesty. When she decided to step down, she said openly, I no longer have enough in the tank to do it justice. That statement wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. It was an act of self-compassion in a world that glorifies self-sacrifice. She reminded us that even leaders, even caregivers, need to refill their emotional reserves. Empathy doesn't mean running yourself dry. It means knowing when to rest so you can show up again with authenticity and strength. Self-compassion restores balance by softening the voice of self-criticism. When we mess up, our inner critic rushes in with harsh judgment. You should have known better. You're not enough. You always fail. But self-compassion steps in gently and says, you made a mistake, yes, but that doesn't define you. Everyone stumbles. What matters is what you learn next. That simple shift transforms pain into growth. When we allow ourselves to be imperfect, we become more understanding, not just toward others, but toward ourselves. And that is the missing half of empathy. It starts with you. Here's a simple self-compassion exercise you can try right now. Close your eyes. Place your hand over your heart. Take a slow, deep breath. Now imagine you're talking to your younger self, that innocent version of you who once only wanted to do good, to be loved, to make people proud. Say to that version of you, I know you're trying your best. I know you've been through things that hurt, but I'm here for you now. You deserve rest. You deserve love. You are enough. Let those words sink in. This isn't fantasy, it's reprogramming. It's the emotional rewiring of a heart that's been too hard on itself for too long. Another simple practice is self-talk journaling. Each day, write down one sentence that captures how you spoke to yourself. Was it kind or critical? Then rewrite the critical thoughts in a self-compassionate tone, the way you'd speak to someone you care about. For example, I failed that project again. I'm useless. Rewrite it as, that didn't go as planned, but I'm learning. I'm still growing. Mistakes don't erase my worth. Over time, this retrains your mind to speak with kindness automatically, because the way you talk to yourself shapes the way you feel about yourself and the way you treat others. Many people believe that being kind to themselves will make them lazy or self-centered. But the truth is, self-compassion actually builds resilience. When you comfort yourself through pain instead of punishing yourself, you recover faster. You think clearer. You forgive deeper. You become emotionally stronger, not weaker. Think about leaders, healers, or parents who stand in service to others every day. The ones who last, who continue giving without losing their spark, are the ones who have learned to refill their hearts. Because empathy without self-compassion eventually collapses. But empathy with self-compassion expands endlessly. Key takeaways for you. Self-compassion is empathy turned inward. It's giving yourself the same kindness you offer others. You cannot pour from an empty cup. Rest, reflection, and self-kindness are not luxuries. They're necessities. Self-compassion heals burnout. It softens self-criticism and replaces guilt with growth. Practice daily self-talk and journaling. Speak to yourself like you would to someone you deeply care for. True empathy begins with you. The more love you give yourself, the more authentic love you can share with others. Your needs matter too. You don't have to choose between caring for others and caring for yourself. Both can coexist beautifully. So, starting today, treat yourself as someone worthy of your own empathy. Speak gently to your heart. Rest when you need to. Forgive when you stumble. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. Because when you show compassion to yourself, you not only heal, you teach others what true empathy looks like. If this message spoke to you, take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. So together, we can continue learning how to care deeply without being drained. Chapter 10. Mindful Empathy. Responding, not reacting. When someone tells you their pain, do you feel it almost as if it's your own? Do you sometimes carry the emotions of others long after the conversation is over? If you do, you're not broken. You're deeply empathetic. But to thrive, you must learn one key skill. Mindful empathy, the ability to care deeply without drowning in what others feel. Today, we'll explore how to stay compassionate while remaining centered, how to respond with awareness, instead of reacting with emotional absorption. The neuroscience of empathy and mirror neurons. In the early 1990s, scientists studying brain activity discovered something fascinating. a network of cells called mirror neurons. These neurons fire not only when we perform an action, but also when we see someone else perform it. When you see someone smile, your mirror neurons light up, mimicking that feeling of joy. When you watch someone cry, those same neurons resonate with sadness. This is empathy in action, not just emotional, but biological. It's our brain's way of saying, I see you and I feel you. But here's the problem. When empathy is unregulated, our brain can't tell where their pain ends and ours begins. The mirror neurons keep firing, and we start to absorb emotional pain like a sponge. Over time, this can lead to emotional fatigue, stress, and even burnout. This is why mindfulness becomes essential. It helps us pause, recognize what's happening inside, and choose how to respond instead of automatically reacting. How mindfulness helps regulate emotional resonance. Mindfulness is the art of being present, aware of your thoughts, emotions, and sensations without judgment. When you're mindful, you don't suppress your empathy, you observe it. You notice your feelings, name them, and allow them to pass without letting them control your actions. Think of it like this. Empathy is the wind. Mindfulness is the anchor. Without the anchor, the wind can carry you anywhere. A powerful real-world example of mindful empathy can be seen in Jacinda Ardern, the former Prime Minister of New Zealand. After a tragic national event, she responded not with outrage, but with calm strength and compassion. She felt the pain of her people, but she didn't let that pain consume her decision-making. Her empathy guided her, but mindfulness kept her steady. Mindfulness doesn't numb your emotions. It gives them direction. It turns empathy from a flood into a river, still powerful, but guided and purposeful, responding with awareness instead of absorbing unconsciously. Let's make this practical. Imagine a friend is venting about a painful breakup. If you're not mindful, you might instantly absorb their sadness. You start to feel drained, heavy, maybe even anxious, even though it's not your story. But with mindful empathy, you listen deeply without internalizing their pain. You stay aware of your emotional boundaries. You say, I hear how painful that must be for you, instead of subconsciously thinking, I'm now responsible for fixing this pain. You become a mirror, not a sponge. Former German Chancellor Angela Merkel was known for her calm, deliberate responses, even under global crises. While others reacted emotionally or defensively, she was often quiet first, listening, thinking, and then speaking. That pause is mindfulness in motion. It's the difference between emotional reactivity and emotional intelligence. When we practice mindful empathy, we create space between stimulus and response. And in that space lies our peace, our wisdom, and our power. Breath work, grounding, and presence as daily tools. Let's talk about how to make mindfulness part of your daily life. Not just a concept, but a habit that protects your empathy. Breath work, the power of a pause when you feel overwhelmed by someone's emotion. Pause and take a slow, deep breath. Inhale through your nose for 4 counts. Hold for 2. Exhale for 6. This activates your parasympathetic nervous system, the body's calm response. It sends a signal to your brain. You are safe. You are present. Grounding. Return to your body. Notice what you feel beneath your feet. Feel your breath in your chest. Touch something solid near you, a chair or a desk. Grounding reminds your body that you are here in your own experience, not lost in someone else's emotion. Presence. Listen with awareness when someone speaks. Give them your full attention. But also stay aware of your own internal reactions. If you start feeling drained, silently say to yourself, this is their emotion. I can care without carrying it. These small tools are powerful emotional armor. They don't disconnect you from others. They help you connect wisely. Pause for a moment. Think about the last time someone's emotion affected your peace. Maybe it was a coworker's stress, a friend's heartbreak, or a family member's anger. Did you absorb it or observe it? True empathy doesn't mean you must suffer with others. It means you understand them while still holding on to your center. As the philosopher Thich Nhat Hanh wrote in his book, The Art of Communicating, Understanding is love's other name. If you don't understand, you can't love. But he also taught that understanding comes from mindfulness, the capacity to see clearly without being clouded by reactivity. That's the balance we seek, the kind of empathy that sees, feels, and responds, but never loses itself. Key takeaways for you. Empathy without mindfulness leads to exhaustion. Your brain mirrors emotions, but you must learn when to let go. Mindfulness is your anchor. It lets you observe feelings without drowning in them. Respond, don't react. Pause, breathe, and choose your next step consciously. Breath work, grounding, and awareness are your daily tools to regulate emotional resonance. The goal is not to feel less, it's to feel wisely. When you master mindful empathy, you become emotionally resilient, compassionate, and peaceful, all at once. Empathy is a superpower, but only when guided by awareness. The world doesn't need more people who absorb pain. It needs people who can transform it. That starts with you. So, take this moment. Inhale deeply. Exhale slowly. Remind yourself, I can care deeply without caring at all. If this chapter spoke to you, remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps this message reach more people who need to hear it. People who care deeply, just like you. Stay kind, stay aware, and most of all, stay centered, because that's where your true empathy shines. Chapter 11. Rebuilding Inner Strength After Emotional Drain. There comes a moment in every deeply empathetic person's life when the heart feels heavier than usual. Not because of a single heartbreak, but from the quiet accumulation of caring too much for too long. When that happens, it's as if your inner light begins to flicker. You still love, you still give, but everything feels muted, empty, or forced. This is emotional depletion, the invisible exhaustion that slowly drains your joy, focus, and spirit. Many people mistake this exhaustion for laziness or lack of motivation. But in truth, emotional depletion is not weakness. It's a signal, a gentle but urgent whisper from your soul saying, I need rest. I need care. I've carried too much for too long. Recognizing the signs of emotional depletion. So, how can you tell when you've crossed the line from healthy empathy into emotional exhaustion? The signs often begin subtly. You start feeling numb instead of compassionate. You avoid calls or messages from people you used to help. You feel drained after conversations, even short ones. You begin resenting the very people you care about. And perhaps most importantly, you lose connection with yourself. Imagine your empathy as a phone battery. Every time you comfort, listen, or support others, you spend emotional energy. But unlike your phone, you can't simply plug yourself in. You must intentionally recharge through solitude, rest, and reflection. Otherwise, no matter how kind or strong you are, the battery dies. In psychology, this is called compassion fatigue. It's common among caregivers, parents, teachers, social workers, and anyone whose heart is wired to care. When empathy becomes overextended, burnout follows, and recovery becomes essential. The stages of emotional burnout recovery. Rebuilding inner strength after emotional drain is not about snapping out of it. It's a gradual process that unfolds in stages. Let's break down these stages one at a time. Stage 1, recognition, the awakening. This is the point where you finally stop pretending everything is fine. You admit, I'm tired, not just physically, but emotionally. Recognition is powerful because you can't heal what you refuse to acknowledge. Many world leaders have experienced this. For instance, Jacinda Ardern, former Prime Minister of New Zealand, openly admitted when she stepped down that she no longer had enough in the tank. Her honesty reflected strength, not defeat. It showed that even those who lead nations must sometimes pause to protect their emotional well-being. That's the first step of recovery, owning your exhaustion without shame. Stage 2, release, letting go of emotional weight. The next stage is release. This means forgiving yourself for not being endlessly strong. It means allowing yourself to cry, to say no, to stop fixing others for a while. Release is not weakness, it's emotional cleansing. In The Gifts of Imperfection by Brené Brown, she wrote, "Letting go of exhaustion as a status symbol and productivity as self-worth is the path to wholehearted living." That quote reminds us that constant giving without rest is not love, it's self-abandonment. Stage 3. Restoration, rest, solitude, and reflection. Once you've acknowledged and released, restoration begins. Here, solitude becomes medicine. When the world is noisy, solitude helps you hear your own voice again. When others pull you in every direction, solitude helps you find your center. In your own life, restoration might mean turning off your phone, taking slow walks, journaling, or simply sitting in silence. Rest is not idle, it's repair in progress. Stage 4. Renewal, building new emotional habits. After rest comes renewal, the stage where you begin to rebuild stronger than before. You learn new emotional habits, saying no gracefully, scheduling breaks, prioritizing joy. You stop apologizing for needing space. You begin to listen to your energy as much as you listen to others. Recovery teaches you that you are not a well for everyone to draw from. You are a river, and rivers need time to flow freely again. How solitude, rest, and reflection rebuild empathy powerfully. Empathy doesn't disappear when you're drained. It's simply buried under fatigue. Solitude and reflection clear that emotional fog, so your empathy shines again, balanced and wise. Consider Nelson Mandela's contemporary, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, the former president of Liberia and Africa's first elected female head of state. Her years of imprisonment, exile, and leadership through post-war chaos taught her that solitude and reflection are not luxuries. They are survival tools. In her memoir, This Child Will Be Great, she described quiet moments of journaling and prayer as her way to rebuild courage one thought at a time. This shows us that when we pause, we don't lose progress, we preserve it. Rest refuels empathy, reflection deepens it, and solitude strengthens it, giving us emotional clarity that endless activity cannot. Creating an emotional recharge plan. Now, let's make this practical, because real change requires a plan. Here's a simple framework for your emotional recharge plan. Identify your energy drainers. Make a list of the activities or people that consistently drain you. Awareness is power. Once you know where your energy leaks, you can begin to seal them. Schedule quiet time. Don't wait until you're exhausted to rest. Add solitude to your calendar like an appointment. It can be 10 minutes in the morning or a full day each week. Consistency matters more than duration. Nourish your senses. Soft music, candlelight, a nature walk, or a favorite book can reawaken calm energy. Let your environment remind you that peace is still within reach. Reflect and reset at least once a week. Ask yourself, what gave me energy this week and what drained it? Then adjust your boundaries accordingly. Reaffirm self-compassion. Speak to yourself kindly. When you feel tired, don't criticize, comfort. Tell yourself, I'm healing. I'm growing stronger. I'm recharging. This plan doesn't just protect your energy, it renews your empathy. Because when you're emotionally strong, you give more authentically and sustainably. Key takeaways for you. Emotional depletion is not weakness. It's a signal that you've cared deeply without recharging. Recovery happens in 4 stages: recognition, release, restoration, and renewal. Solitude, rest, and reflection are not escapes. They are tools for rebuilding empathy. You cannot pour from an empty cup. Protecting your energy is protecting your compassion. An emotional recharge plan helps you serve others from strength, not sacrifice. If you've ever felt emotionally empty after giving so much of yourself, know this: your heart is not broken, it's simply tired. And tired hearts don't need judgment. They need gentleness, space, and time to heal. Rebuilding inner strength after emotional drain is not about becoming less caring. It's about learning to care wiser. Because when empathy is balanced with rest, you don't just survive, you inspire. If this chapter has helped you reflect on your emotional well-being, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video to support the message of healing through empathy. Share it with someone who might be feeling drained or overwhelmed. And subscribe to this channel for more life-changing insights that help you grow, protect your peace, and thrive with strength and compassion. Chapter 12, Assertive Communication for Empaths. Have you ever felt your voice shaking when you needed to say no? Or caught yourself agreeing to something you didn't want, just to avoid disappointing someone? If you have, you're not alone. For many empaths, communication can be emotionally charged. We often feel responsible for other people's comfort, even at the expense of our own peace. But today, we're going to change that. This chapter is about learning assertive communication, how to express your needs clearly without guilt or aggression. It's about finding your voice and using it with grace and strength. The gentle power of assertiveness. Assertiveness isn't aggression. It isn't dominance. It's the calm confidence of knowing your truth and expressing it with respect. It's not shouting to be heard. It's speaking so you can be understood. An empath who learns assertive communication becomes powerful in a quiet way. You no longer bend out of shape to make others comfortable. You speak your truth and let the truth stand strong. One of the best examples of this kind of communication comes from Jacinda Ardern, the former Prime Minister of New Zealand. She led her country through moments of intense crisis with compassion, but also with clear, firm boundaries. She once said, "You can be both empathetic and strong." And her leadership proved it. Her tone was calm, her words were deliberate, and her actions aligned with her values. She never confused kindness with weakness. That's the essence of assertiveness for empaths. Kindness with boundaries. How to express needs without guilt or aggression. Many empaths feel guilty when they ask for something. We tell ourselves, "I don't want to be a burden," or "maybe my needs aren't that important." But here's the truth. When you ignore your needs, you teach others to ignore them too. Assertiveness starts with self-permission. You are allowed to have needs. You are allowed to express them. You are allowed to take up space. One simple framework you can use is the I statement. Instead of blaming or attacking, speak from your own experience. For example, instead of "you never listen to me," try "I feel unheard when I'm interrupted." Instead of "you're being unfair," try "I'd like to find a way that feels fair for both of us." Statements are powerful because they remove blame. They open the door for dialogue instead of defense. This communication style was beautifully explained in the book Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. He wrote, "When we communicate from the heart, we are able to listen to others and ourselves with compassion. Assertiveness doesn't come from anger. It comes from honesty. Words and tone that protect peace." Empaths often worry that assertiveness will create conflict. But the truth is, your tone can protect peace even when your words are firm. Let's look at how. When you say "no, I can't do that right now," in a calm, steady tone, it communicates self-respect. When you say "I understand how you feel, but I also need time for myself," you show empathy while standing your ground. Your tone is as important as your words. A peaceful tone disarms defensiveness. It allows you to be firm without being harsh. Think of Angela Merkel, former Chancellor of Germany. She was known for her calm, steady communication style, even in heated political debates. She didn't need to raise her voice to command respect. Her tone conveyed composure, control, and deep thought. Her assertiveness wasn't loud. It was anchored. When you speak with calm energy, you teach others how to treat you with respect. Handling conflict calmly. Conflict is where most empaths freeze or flee. We hate confrontation. Our nervous systems go into overdrive because we can feel the tension in the air. But avoiding conflict often creates deeper problems. The unspoken resentment builds, and soon, our silence turns into exhaustion. To handle conflict calmly, remember this. Your goal is understanding, not winning. When someone raises their voice, lower yours. When someone attacks, stay grounded. When emotions rise, take a deep breath before responding. Silence, used wisely, is a form of strength. For instance, think of Kofi Annan, the former Secretary General of the United Nations. He dealt with some of the most complex global conflicts with patience and diplomacy. He once said, "We may have different religions, different languages, different colored skin, but we all belong to one human race." That statement didn't just express empathy, it invited cooperation. It was assertive communication on a global scale, calm, clear, and deeply human. So, when you're faced with conflict, follow 3 steps. Pause before reacting. A short pause prevents emotional flooding. Listen to understand, not to reply. Empaths naturally do this well. Use it as your strength. State your perspective simply and firmly. "I respect your view, but I see it differently." These small shifts turn potential arguments into opportunities for respect. The confidence to say, "This doesn't feel right for me." This sentence, "This doesn't feel right for me," is one of the most powerful tools for an empath. It's clear, honest, and non-defensive. You don't need to justify, over-explain, or apologize. Confidence doesn't always mean having all the answers. It means trusting your feelings enough to honor them. Let's look at another world leader, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, the former president of Liberia and the first elected female head of state in Africa. She faced enormous pressure, both politically and socially, yet she often stood firm against expectations that didn't align with her values. She once said, "If your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough." That same courage applies to speaking up for yourself. It might feel scary, but it's worth it. When you say, "This doesn't feel right for me," you're declaring that your intuition matters. You're choosing alignment over approval. That's emotional maturity. Practical exercise for empaths. Try this tonight. Write down 3 situations where you usually stay silent or say yes when you want to say no. Next to each one, write a calm, assertive sentence you could use instead. For example, "I appreciate the offer, but I need time to think about it." "I understand your urgency, but I can't take that on right now." "I care about you, but this conversation is overwhelming. Let's continue later." Practicing these phrases in advance helps your brain build confidence for real-life moments. Key takeaways for you. Assertiveness is kindness with boundaries. It allows you to respect others and yourself. Your tone is your shield. Speak firmly, but stay calm. Conflict isn't a threat. It's a chance to clarify understanding. You don't owe anyone over-explanation. A simple "this doesn't feel right for me" is enough. Empathy without assertion becomes exhaustion. Balance both, and you'll find peace. Remember, learning assertive communication is like strengthening a muscle. The more you practice, the more natural it becomes. You don't need to change who you are. You just need to express your truth with confidence and care. If this chapter resonated with you, take a moment to reflect. Where in your life do you need to speak up gently but firmly? Who do you need to say, "This doesn't feel right for me," to? Your voice matters. Your peace matters. And your empathy becomes even more powerful when guided by boundaries. Chapter 13, Redefining Relationships Through Empowered Empathy. There comes a moment in every empath's life when they realize not everyone deserves the same depth of care they offer. You see, empathy without wisdom often becomes self-sabotage. We give and give and give again, hoping that kindness will change people who aren't ready to change themselves. But real empathy, empowered empathy, is not about fixing others. It's about inspiring them while protecting your peace. Today, we'll explore how empathy transforms when it's balanced with self-respect, how to choose relationships that nourish your soul instead of draining your energy, and how to stop fixing people and start inspiring them through your example. Let's start with a truth many people struggle to accept. You teach people how to treat you by how you treat yourself. Empathy that lacks boundaries can become an open invitation for emotional imbalance. Think about it. If you keep overextending yourself to make others comfortable, you're silently teaching them that your needs don't matter. Empowered empathy changes that script. It says, "I care about you, but I also care about me." It honors both compassion and self-respect. When empathy meets self-respect, something beautiful happens. You stop trying to earn love and start embodying it. You stop chasing validation and begin valuing your peace. Empowered empathy looks exactly like that. Not emotional excess, but emotional intelligence in action. Now, let's talk about choosing connections that nourish, not drain. Have you ever noticed how some people energize you while others leave you emotionally exhausted? Relationships are either charging stations or draining outlets. The difference often lies in the emotional exchange. Is it mutual or is it one-sided? Think about this. Every healthy connection must have two elements: emotional nourishment and mutual responsibility. That means both people care about each other's well-being, both take accountability for their behavior, and both are willing to communicate honestly. When you only give but never receive, that's not love, it's depletion. And when you keep rescuing someone who refuses to grow, you're not helping them. You're enabling their stagnation. A relationship should feel like teamwork, not emotional babysitting. There's a quote from the book The Road Less Traveled by Scott Peck that says, "Love is the will to extend one's self for the purpose of nurturing one's own or another's spiritual growth." Notice that it says one's own first. That's the balance of empowered empathy. You can't nurture another's growth if you're constantly neglecting your own. So, before you give more, ask yourself, is this relationship helping me grow too? Because love that depletes you isn't love. It's sacrifice disguised as loyalty. Let's go deeper into something many empaths struggle with: the urge to fix people. If you've ever thought, I can change them, or they just need my support, you've fallen into the trap of the rescuer. The fixer identity feels noble, but it's actually rooted in fear. The fear of being unneeded or unloved. True empowerment comes when you stop trying to heal people who refuse to take responsibility for themselves. You can hold space, yes. You can guide, yes. But you cannot carry someone through their transformation. Remember Jacinda Ardern, the former Prime Minister of New Zealand. She's known globally for her empathy-driven leadership. But notice how she led. She didn't overextend or try to please everyone. Her compassion came with clarity and courage. She once said, "One of the criticisms I've faced over the years is that I'm not aggressive enough or assertive enough, that because I'm empathetic it means I'm weak. I totally rebel against that. I refuse to believe you cannot be compassionate and strong. That is empowered empathy in motion, leading with heart, yet grounded in strength." Now, how do we shift from fixing people to inspiring them? By being the example, not the rescuer. When you live with peace, integrity, and authenticity, you naturally invite others to rise to their highest selves. You no longer say, "I'll change you." Instead, your energy says, "I'll grow," and maybe you'll be inspired to do the same. Empathy becomes contagious when it's balanced. It elevates everyone in its presence. Next, let's talk about the beauty of mutual emotional responsibility. In any meaningful connection, whether friendship, family, or love, both people must take responsibility for the emotional climate they create. One person cannot do all the emotional labor. Mutual responsibility looks like this. I'll own my triggers. I'll communicate my needs clearly. I'll listen to understand, not to defend. This balance turns empathy into a partnership instead of a burden. When both sides show up maturely, empathy no longer feels like a drain. It becomes a dance of understanding and growth. Think of Nelson Mandela's contemporary, Desmond Tutu, who spent his life preaching forgiveness and mutual accountability during South Africa's reconciliation process. He once said, "Without forgiveness, there's no future, but without accountability, there's no healing." Empowered empathy is built on that principle. Forgiveness with accountability, kindness with truth, and love with limits. So, what does redefining relationships through empowered empathy look like in everyday life? It means you listen with compassion, but protect your peace. Offer help, but not at the cost of your well-being. Speak kindly, but stand firmly. Love deeply, but never lose yourself. It means you stop seeking validation from draining relationships and start attracting those who match your emotional energy. Because when you respect yourself, you naturally attract people who respect you too. Key takeaways for you. Empathy without self-respect leads to emotional exhaustion. Healthy relationships are mutual. Both people take responsibility for emotional balance. Stop fixing people. Start inspiring them by example. Choose connections that recharge, not drain. Empowered empathy is compassionate strength, not weakness. Empathy is not about absorbing everyone's pain. It's about sharing light in a way that doesn't dim your own. When you protect your energy, you don't become less kind. You become more effective, more grounded, and more at peace. Remember, your empathy is a gift. But even gifts need care, protection, and boundaries to stay beautiful. If this chapter spoke to you, take a moment to reflect on your own relationships. Ask yourself, which ones make me feel lighter, and which ones make me feel drained? Begin today. Choose empowerment over exhaustion, inspiration over fixing, and balance over burnout. And if you found this audiobook helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel, so we can keep growing this community of emotionally intelligent, compassionate, and empowered listeners. Chapter 14. The Spiritual Side of Boundaried Empathy. Empathy is not just an emotional quality. It's a spiritual calling. To feel deeply is to touch something sacred within yourself. The part of you that recognizes another human soul and whispers, "I see you." But many empaths mistake this sacred exchange for self-sacrifice. They believe that to help others, they must empty themselves. Yet, true empathy was never meant to drain you. It was meant to connect you. To others, yes, but also to the divine source of love and strength within you. Seeing empathy as a sacred exchange, not self-sacrifice. Imagine your empathy as a river, flowing freely, nourishing everything it touches. But even a river must have banks, boundaries that guide its flow. Without them, the river floods and destroys what it meant to nurture. When you give empathy without boundaries, you lose your spiritual alignment. You start helping not from abundance, but from depletion. You begin to give because you feel obligated, not because you feel called. Empathy, when practiced with wisdom, becomes a sacred exchange, a two-way flow of energy that uplifts both giver and receiver. A wonderful example of this can be seen in the leadership of Jacinda Ardern, the former Prime Minister of New Zealand. Her empathy was visible in her leadership. She led with kindness and compassion, yet she also set firm boundaries. She showed the world that strength and softness can coexist. Her empathy didn't come from emotional exhaustion. It came from spiritual alignment. You see, empathy becomes sacred when it comes from wholeness, not martyrdom. When you stop trying to save everyone and instead seek to serve wisely, your compassion transforms into something powerful, something sustainable, detaching from ego-driven savior identity. Many people unconsciously carry what I call the savior complex. It's the belief that it's your duty to rescue others, fix their pain, or make them happy, even at your own expense. This complex often hides behind noble intentions, but deep down, it feeds the ego. It says, "I am valuable only when I am helping." It whispers they need me. But the truth is, people don't need you to save them. They need you to see them, to believe in their strength. The difference is profound. The world has known leaders who fell into this trap, believing their mission was to carry the entire weight of humanity on their shoulders. But wisdom teaches otherwise. Mother Teresa, for example, embodied empathy on a spiritual level. But even she often spoke of the importance of stepping back to pray, to refill her spirit. She once said, "If you are busy feeding others but do not take time to feed your soul, you will have nothing left to give." That is the balance of spiritual empathy, to serve without becoming enslaved by the role of a savior. You are not the source of others' healing. You are a vessel through which love flows. When you detach from ego-driven empathy, you no longer need to be needed. You begin to give from freedom, not fear. The connection between empathy, purpose, and peace. Empathy and purpose are deeply intertwined. When your empathy aligns with your purpose, it becomes a force of peace rather than pain. Think about Angela Merkel, the former Chancellor of Germany. Her empathy was quiet but steady. She didn't chase emotional spotlight or dramatize care. She practiced what could be called grounded empathy, making decisions with both compassion and clarity. She showed that leadership guided by empathy can also be rational, structured, and balanced. This is what it means to live with spiritual empathy, where compassion doesn't cloud judgment and logic doesn't kill love. It's empathy guided by wisdom. It's heart and mind working together in harmony. When you live from this space, your empathy no longer feels like a burden. You start to experience peace because you're no longer giving beyond your spiritual capacity. You become a channel for compassion, not a container for others' suffering. One of my favorite books, The Untethered Soul by Michael A. Singer, says, "True spiritual growth is about letting go of the false self, the one that constantly feels it must fix, control, or protect. Empathy without boundaries is a form of control, not intentionally, but energetically. When you learn to let go, to trust the divine flow of life, you discover that peace and purpose were never separate from empathy. They were its essence all along. How protecting your energy honors your divine essence. Your energy is sacred. It's the spiritual current that powers your empathy. When you protect it, you honor the divine essence within you. In every spiritual tradition, there's a call to guard the heart, not in the sense of closing it, but in the sense of keeping it pure, not allowing it to be polluted by emotional chaos or manipulation. Empathy without energy protection is like leaving your door open in a storm. Everything, good or bad, rushes in. Protecting your energy is an act of reverence. It's saying to the universe, I value this light you've given me. I will not let it be dimmed by constant giving without restoration. This is why spiritual masters spend time in solitude, meditation, or reflection, not to isolate themselves, but to recharge their divine connection. You can do the same in simple ways. Spend a few quiet moments each day to reconnect with your breath. Visualize light surrounding you when you feel drained. Speak gentle affirmations like, my compassion is wise, my energy is sacred, and my empathy flows with balance. Remember, you are not abandoning people when you protect your energy. You are ensuring that when you do show up, you bring your highest, most loving self, not your exhausted version. Key takeaways for you. Empathy is sacred, not sacrificial. Giving should uplift, not deplete you. Detach from a savior mindset. You're not here to fix people. You're here to inspire healing through presence. Balance compassion with clarity. Empathy, guided by wisdom, leads to peace. Protecting your energy is spiritual self-respect. It keeps your light pure and your purpose strong. Boundaries are not barriers. They're the spiritual containers that allow empathy to thrive sustainably. Empathy, at its highest form, is divine alignment, where love, wisdom, and peace flow effortlessly. It's a dance between giving and grounding, between helping others and honoring yourself. When you begin to live this way, you don't lose your empathy. You elevate it. You stop burning out and start shining through. If this chapter spoke to your heart, remember, you are part of a growing community of people learning to care deeply without losing themselves. Please like, share, and subscribe so that more people can discover this message. And together, we can build a world where empathy is strength, not suffering. Chapter 15. Living Empathy Without Burnout. Empathy is one of the most beautiful gifts we can possess. It connects hearts, bridges differences, and reminds us that humanity is one shared experience. Yet, as you've discovered throughout this audiobook, empathy without balance can drain the giver and blur the boundary between love and exhaustion. Now, in this final chapter, we tie everything together, from self-awareness to daily practice, so that you can live with empathy that uplifts others and sustains you. Imagine empathy as a flame. If it burns too wildly, it consumes everything around it, including you. But when protected by a steady glass, it shines steadily, giving warmth and light. Living empathy without burnout means learning how to keep that flame protected, not smothered. Let's begin with what this looks like in real life. Integrating everything learned, from awareness to practice. Living empathy begins with daily self-awareness. Every morning, before you extend your compassion to others, ask yourself, how am I feeling today? If you're already exhausted, frustrated, or emotionally full, it's not the right time to absorb someone else's burden. This simple check-in is your first act of healthy empathy for yourself. Think of leaders who embodied empathy with strength. Jacinda Ardern, the former Prime Minister of New Zealand, became a global example of compassionate leadership. She showed deep care for her people during crises, yet she also demonstrated emotional boundaries. She once said, "You could be both strong and kind." Her empathy wasn't passive. It was active, measured, and mindful. She listened deeply, made difficult decisions, and cared without being consumed. That's the balance you must aim for: empathy that takes action, not empathy that loses itself. In practical terms, this means setting emotional limits before burnout begins. When someone pours out their pain to you, you don't have to fix it all. Sometimes your role is to simply listen, not to solve. Compassion doesn't mean taking ownership of every problem. The new identity, a compassionate, centered, and self-respecting empath. As you evolve, your identity shifts from "I care too much" to "I care wisely." You begin to see that empathy is not about endless sacrifice. It's about connection with clarity. You no longer see boundaries as selfish. You see them as sacred, a way of honoring your emotional energy. Consider Angela Merkel, the longtime Chancellor of Germany. Known for her calm and grounded leadership style, she was empathetic but never emotionally reactive. She once said, "Compromise is the art of achieving more than you thought you could." Merkel's empathy was not loud or dramatic. It was steady. She led through listening and understanding, but also through reason and restraint. That's the essence of a centered empath, leading with both heart and head. To live empathy without burnout, you must embody emotional maturity. You must learn to differentiate between feeling for others and taking on their feelings. This means when someone is upset, you can say to yourself, "I understand their pain, but it is not mine to carry." Being a self-respecting empath also means no longer apologizing for your limits. You can care deeply while still saying no. You can support someone's healing without sacrificing your peace. This new identity makes you both softer and stronger. Real-life scenarios and balanced responses. Let's look at some examples of how balanced empathy works in everyday life. Scenario 1. A friend constantly complains about their job. Old pattern. You listen endlessly, give advice they never take, and end up drained. New pattern. You listen once, validate their feelings, and say, "I trust you'll make the best decision when you're ready." You offer care, but keep your energy. Scenario 2. A family member expects you to solve their personal crisis. Old pattern. You drop everything to help, neglecting your own needs. New pattern. You say, "I care about what you're going through. I can listen tonight for a few minutes, but I have some things to finish too." You help within your limits. Scenario 3. At work, someone constantly offloads emotional stress on you. Old pattern. You take it on silently, thinking it's your role to absorb it. New pattern. You kindly redirect. "I understand that must be tough. Maybe you should talk to someone in HR or take a short break." You stay kind but not drained. Balanced empathy doesn't mean you're cold. It means you're conscious of your emotional bandwidth. You give from fullness, not depletion. Even Dalai Lama, known for his boundless compassion, teaches that true compassion begins with self-compassion. In his book, The Art of Happiness, he reminds us that inner peace is not selfish. It's what allows you to radiate calm and kindness to others. Final reflections. Caring deeply, staying strong, and living peacefully. Living empathy without burnout is not about shutting off your heart. It's about keeping it open without letting it bleed out. It's about understanding that you are not responsible for everyone's healing, only your own. When you live this way, your empathy becomes a light that guides rather than a fire that consumes. Think about Mother Teresa, who served the poor and sick for decades. She often spoke of the importance of prayer and solitude, not as religious rituals, but as ways to refill her soul. Even she understood that giving endlessly without renewal leads to emptiness. Your daily life will always have people who need understanding, patience, and care. But your greatest gift to them is not your exhaustion. It's your example. When people see you living calmly, compassionately, and joyfully, they learn from your energy, not your sacrifice. So as you move forward from this audiobook, remember these truths. You can love deeply and still protect your energy. You can care for others without losing yourself. You can be gentle and still be powerful. You can give without guilt and rest without shame. That is what it means to live empathy without burnout. Key takeaways for you. Empathy begins with awareness. Check in with your emotions daily before extending care to others. Boundaries protect your compassion. They don't make you selfish. They make your empathy sustainable. Detach with love. You can witness pain without absorbing it. Self-compassion fuels your empathy. When you refill yourself, you give from abundance. Balanced empathy inspires others. Your calm presence teaches more than your sacrifice ever could. You now hold the power to live with empathy that heals, not hurts. To care without collapse. To love without losing yourself. Let this chapter be your reminder. Empathy is not about giving everything. It's about being everything you truly are while caring for the world around you. Take a deep breath, and as you step into your next chapter of life, carry this truth in your heart. You can care deeply and still stay whole. We've reached the end of this audiobook, but this isn't really an ending. It's a new beginning. Throughout this audiobook, you've explored the heart of what it means to be empathetic in a world that often misunderstands gentle souls. You've learned that empathy is not a weakness. It's a profound strength, one that needs awareness, boundaries, and self-compassion to thrive. You now understand that caring deeply doesn't mean carrying everything. That saying no isn't rejection, it's respect. That protecting your peace doesn't make you cold. It makes your compassion sustainable. Empathy without burnout is about balance. The balance between giving and resting, listening and letting go, helping others and honoring yourself. And maybe now, you can look back and see how much of your pain was never a punishment for caring too much. It was a reminder to care for yourself, too. As you step forward, remember this truth. You are allowed to care deeply and stay whole. You are allowed to love fiercely and protect your peace. You are allowed to be kind and confident, compassionate and clear. When you live from that place, calm, centered, and self-respecting, your empathy doesn't drain you. It empowers you. It radiates peace. And it touches others not from a place of exhaustion, but from strength. So take what you've learned here and carry it into your daily life, into your relationships, your work, your leadership, and your quiet moments. Let empathy be your light, not your burden. Because the world doesn't just need more people who care. It needs people who care wisely. People like you. If this audiobook has spoken to your heart, inspired your growth, or helped you see empathy in a new light, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us create more powerful audiobooks that uplift, heal, and empower listeners just like you. And if you ever find yourself slipping back into the old patterns of overgiving, come back to these words. Let them remind you that your heart deserves the same compassion you so freely give to others. Thank you for listening. Stay kind, stay strong, and keep living empathy without burnout.